Everybody, welcome to the tip video to win more gunfights in Apex Legends. So how I'm gonna do this video, I'm gonna go over 5 main categories. The 5 main categories are gonna be preparation, positioning, your loadout, movement, and your team. And then I'm going to go into more specific tips for each one of the categories and common mistakes that I see players make. I'm going to have to say that this video is not catered towards noobs or towards pros. I'm going to have tips for both worlds here. Me personally, I've always been a first-person shooter guy. I've always played a lot of Call of Duty, but ever since Apex has came out, I've pretty much only played Apex. So I can tell you right now, these tips are not coming from nobody, and a lot of these tips that I talk about during the video are going to work in the vast majority of other first-person shooters. So my people, if you are ready for tips to win more gunfights in Apex Legends, I hope you enjoy, and let's get into it. So to start things off, the first kind of category that I have for you is preparation. So these are going to be the things that you can do before you even queue into a public lobby, the things that you can do to make sure you're ready for your very first gunfight against what may be a sweaty player. So the first tip that I have for you here in preparation is to use the firing range. What makes the firing range so much more efficient at training yourself, getting yourself ready than actual normal games is because you're always going to have weapons there. You can always shoot the dummies, shoot the other players in the firing range, where in normal Apex you may just be running around. While you're in the firing range, I would recommend to think to yourself if you have any gun weaknesses. So I think there's a difference between not using a gun well and just a horrible gun in general. Even if you get stuck with the L-Star or the EVA 8, you know, the really good players out there, they've already figured out how to use these weapons pretty well. You should still be able to get a decent amount of damage with these weapons. So if there is any gun in the firing range that you think you are personally weak with, that you could be way better with, I think the best way to do it here is to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You probably want to warm up before you get into your first game if you truly want to win more gunfights, but at the same time you want to work on your weapon weaknesses. So I would recommend warming up with the weapon that you're the worst with. It should help you a lot. Another tip that I'm going to go over just very quickly here in the preparation category is settings. So overall for Apex Legends, I would recommend an overall lower sensitivity. Make sure your ADS sensitivity is at least a little bit lower than your normal sensitivity. Apex Legends is a boots on the ground first-person shooter. It's not like Hyperscape to where you're gonna have to be moving your aim way up and way down and gonna have to be doing a bunch of crazy agile stuff. So I mean, in general, I would recommend a lower sensitivity, but make sure to find your right sensitivity and don't just be stuck with whatever was default or whatever you put down as your sensitivity, you know, months in the past. Also for controller players, I would recommend changing your response curve, turning off your vibration. There's dedicated videos for settings, so I'm not going to go over much more in this video. Another thing that I have in the preparation category is headphones. You don't need $500 headphones or even $100 headphones to get a lot of kills in Apex Legends. I would just recommend to don't use your TV speakers or your monitor speakers or speakers in general. If you want to do your best job of warming up in the firing range, I would recommend to run a 1v1. Unless you do the dummy glitch to where they actually move, just shooting dummies is just shooting dummies. That's all it is. You can go to like the Discord LFG or however you want to do it on your platform. I know Xbox has their own way of connecting with people, but to get the best warm-up experience and even to get a little bit of practice in, I recommend trying out a 1v1 if you have not yet. 2 more tips in the preparation category. The one I'm going to talk about now is make sure you're fueled right. So ideally, you're not going to eat, you know, candy before you play. You know, you'll feel the sugar crash while you're playing. It'll feel like you're completely hopeless. Also, just make sure, you know, you have fluids in you. You know, drink some water. Just people, when you're dropping into the game, you should feel like, oh my gosh, I am so ready to kill people. You know the difference before you drop in. You know those times where you're dropping in and you're just like, I'm so tired, I can do absolutely nothing right now. You can control the way you feel in a way. The last tip that I have for you in the preparation category is to just take a deep breath, man. Just make sure to use your brain while you're playing. Don't be throwing your aim left and right, doing a bunch of unnecessary things just to look cool. Just focus on using your big brain knowledge that you've learned from this video, from your FPS experience in general, people. Take a deep breath, relax, but at the same time, do what you have to do to win more gunfights. The next area that I'm going to talk about for you in Apex Legends is positioning. As you know, you've probably heard this in a bunch of tip videos. Positioning is absolutely crucial, but I just want to go over the main things, the main takeaways here to have overall better positioning in Apex Legends. So my first tip inside of positioning for you, be aware of cover. Know where the cover is. Always have in your head where the next piece of cover is. If you're thinking thinking about pushing another squad, just know at what points there is cover and at what points there aren't cover. If there's a bunch of cover, you know that if you get shot at, you can quickly go behind it to heal. But just know that if there is no cover at a certain point and they decide to peek you there, unless you can use one of your abilities, you just might be dead. Being aware of cover is absolutely crucial, people. If you're pushing, you can follow paths through cover to actually get there safely. And if you're running away, you can do the same. You can follow the line of cover to actually get to where you're going safely also. Even if you aren't pushing, even if you aren't running away, it's good to know where the cover is. So if you get shot at, you can quickly react and go to cover. Once you are actually at that rock or the building, you can use your cover to your advantage in the gunfight. You can cover half of your body while you're shooting and make yourself so much harder to hit. And there's a couple of situations in Apex where you can head glitch pretty well. They will only be able to see your head, and you will most likely be able to see more of them than they will be able to see of you. Using cover effectively in a gunfight is absolutely crucial. Reveal the smallest amount of yourself possible during a gunfight. And people, as you probably know, I don't even have to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyways, just because I'm going over positioning. High ground is also gonna be essential. I don't think high ground is super essential in Apex because, you know, it's just gonna make it easier for you to shoot them and not to shoot you. I think having high ground in Apex is kind of crucial because it just gives you so many more movement options. You can jump off one side of the building, jump off the other, or if you're in markets, you know, you can actually drop into the middle of the market through that hatch. As far as positioning goes with the other squads, you could pretty much make an entire video dedicated to making decisions. But a pretty good general rule of thumb tip that I have for you that I'm going to talk about with positioning, with pushing other squads, is don't avoid everyone. So there's going to be players of all play styles watching here. Some people like to drop really hot, you know, to get into a bunch of gunfights and then to take their loot and get the best loot possible and get themselves trained up through a bunch of gunfights. But then there's also going to be players that don't like that much action. They're going to land away from the hot drop. Regardless of what your personal playstyle may be, or regardless of how you like to play in Apex, how you like to have fun, I would have to say that once you get into endgame, you're going to have to want it to get at least a few kills. Do not avoid everybody. I think if you get into endgame and you have not got into very many gunfights, say you only have one kill, I think that is going to put you at a disadvantage. Overall, I think your squad is going to have to want to go through at least 2 squads before you get into endgame to take other people's loot and to get warmed up and ready for the sweatiest squad in the entire match at the end of the game. So I'm just going to sum this all up once again. It's okay to land hot. It's okay to land far away, whatever you have the most fun doing. But if you actually want to win a higher percentage of gunfights, do not just land in the corner of the map. Absolutely avoid everyone. Not push gunfights. This will put you at a loot disadvantage and at a skill disadvantage in the long term. Next, my people, this is more of an Apex specific category. I'm gonna talk about your loadout. So as far as what gun to use in Apex to win more gunfights, I would personally just follow the meta. I always do weapon ranking videos on the channel. So if you are not subscribed, hit that subscribe button because my subscribers know what the best guns are in Apex Legends just from my channel. But as far as what classes to use, SMGs, assault rifles, shotguns, snipers, pistols, personally, no matter what, I would always have one weapon for close range, whether this be a shotgun or SMG. I think eventually you're going to get into a close range gunfight in most games of Apex. Eventually another squad is going to portal towards you, octane stim towards you. There's so many things that the enemies can do to just quickly rush you. The Volt SMG, the Prowler, and the Mastiff are absolutely dominant in close range, and if you try pulling out an assault rifle or something of that nature to counter these weapons, probably going to be pretty difficult. Also, another tip that I have for you here is have a gun to swap to. So say you do get into a close range gunfight, you use the Mastiff, you use the Volt. With the Volt, a lot of times you'll end up actually running out of ammo, and if you do not have cover to reload behind, it's going to be absolutely crucial to have a secondary weapon to swap to. So say you're running the Volt and you have the Sentinel as a secondary weapon, and also the enemy has the Volt, but they have, say, an R301 as a secondary. In that situation, the person with the R301 to swap to as a secondary, they're going to win that gunfight. In most situations, I think it's going to be faster to actually swap to your secondary. But say I'm running a close range weapon and I have some really horrible gun for close range, you know, like say the Sentinel. Preferably, most of the time, I'm going to go behind cover to reload my gun that is best for that situation. What I'm trying to teach here, people, is to use the right tool for the job. Even when you're in a gunfight, make sure you're using the right weapon. A common mistake that I'll see players make a lot is, say they'll have the Prowler as the SMG and the Sentinel as a secondary. Once they run out of ammo in that mag with the Prowler, they'll actually swap to their Sentinel and try to chase down the players with low health. People, if it is possible, if you have a really good gun for close range and you are in close range, ideally, most of the time you're going to want to reload that weapon. Make sure you're using the right tool for the job. But if you are in a gunfight and you do not have cover to reload behind, it is going to be absolutely essential to have a good weapon to swap to. So hopefully what I just talked about cleared up some confusion on what weapon to use when. Use the right tool for the job, people, and ideally you're going to have a good weapon to swap to. The next category I'm talking about is going to be movement. How you strafe, how you move from cover to cover. This is going to give the enemies a pretty good idea on what your playstyle is like and how good you are. There are a couple of do's and don'ts when it comes to just, moving in Apex in general. So first of all, my biggest tip in the movement category for you here, I'm gonna say it right off the bat, be the hunter. Guys, don't be the hunted. Say there's two people sitting around a corner of a building, one player's on one side, one player's on the other. Don't be the person that sits there and waits for the other person to jump around the corner. If it's a true 1v1, if you know you can follow through with it, be the person to jump not only a little bit around the corner, don't just peek around the corner. If you're gonna push a corner, jump way over the corner to where the person that is sitting there will not expect it, and you will be the hunter and not the hunted. Now, when I'm saying to be the hunter, I'm not saying to where you should solo push a squad that is perfectly set up in a building. If you know you're gonna get into a gunfight pretty soon and you have your team nearby, it is way better to be the person that is gonna make the decision to push, because there is a chance that you're gonna push the person and they are not gonna be ready for you. Easy dub to you. Also, guys, strafing. I'm just gonna go over strafing momentarily. Like high ground, strafing is so talked about, but because of the nature of this video, I'm just gonna go over it quickly. So guys, it is not beginning of Apex to where people are just slowly strafing left and right in perfect synchronization, a perfect 5 steps to the left, 5 steps to the right, and repeating. You people are gonna want to do something a little bit different, maybe go 2 steps to the left, 5 to the right, and then back and forth a little bit. So do not be absolutely predictable to where people can just follow you back and forth. You guys, you have to be predictable, but at the same time, do not ruin your aim. Me being on mouse and keyboard, I do like to crouch spam a little bit, but say you're at pretty long range and you're using the R301, you cannot crouch spam, go left and right unpredictably and still hit your shots. When it comes to strafing, do not just do a bunch of random crazy stuff. Make sure the strafing that you're doing is fitting with your aim. There's a way to do it to where you can crouch spam and strafe a little bit to actually assist your aim. Strafing unpredictably is kind of an extremely obvious, but at the same time an extremely crucial thing. Strafing unpredictably is one thing, but strafing unpredictably, making yourself hard to hit but still hitting your shots, is another thing. Also, guys, the last tip that I have for you in the movement category is take the road less traveled by. Guys, if people see you pushing, they see you moving to one piece of cover and they go behind cover to reload, do not just be the absolute bot that'll just do absolutely the most predictable thing. If you're pushing a building, chances are there's a bunch of entrances in that building. If they see you coming up to one doorway, they're gonna be sitting there waiting for you to come in. Take the road less traveled by and go around back door, quickly get a few shots, and maybe go through another door. Guys, be a little bit random with how you do things. When you play against really bad players, they kind of have some sort of synchronization to what they're doing, some absolute just beautiful predictability. You know exactly what they're gonna do. I think to truly be a hard opponent in Apex Legends, there does have to be some sort of, randomness to how you play. Think a little bit outside of the box, guys. I believe in you. The last category that I'm going to talk about with you guys, this may be a little bit depressing to some people, but according to how you want to experience Apex, you do not have to follow this, but I'm going to be talking about your team, guys. If you do not have a team, I'm also going to talk about how to get a team. So recently, there's actually been some news coming out about skill-based matchmaking. Skill-based matchmaking is not a fair way to do things. They do not match equally skilled players against other equally skilled players. If you are queuing in solo, sometimes they're purposely gonna put really bad teammates on your team, and then they're gonna face you against really good players on the other teams. I think to truly have a non-depressing experience in Apex Legends, you're gonna have to have a team of some sort. My people, if you do not play consistently with a team, or you do not ever play with a team, try it out. There are many places to find players. It is everywhere, people. Apex is big. It is not small. You can find teammates. Discord LFG, I think, is the best way, at least for me on PC, to find players. The Discord server, the official Apex Legends Discord, there's always, pretty decent decent players in there that communicate pretty well. I know on consoles they have their own sort of system to where you can find people. There's even websites and apps. I wouldn't recommend those, but there are places absolutely everywhere to find teammates. I recommend to do it. But just some general tips for once you do have a team together, make sure everybody is sort of sticking together, pushing at the same time, withdrawing from the fight at the same time. I think making sure your squad is pushing at the same time, running away at the same time. I mean, it's pretty underrated, guys. If one guy is running away and two people are pushing, you know, you only have 2 members on your squad. I would also have to say to make sure you're not all pushing from one direction. You know, make sure that, you know, you're getting kind of the flanks taken care of at least, if not totally flank out the other team. Having your squad all push from one exact area to where the enemies can see you all at once, it's going to be really easy to call out where the enemies are, but if you're all kind of pushing from different directions, you're going to catch the other team off guard, which is the best way to get easy kills. And the callouts for the other team are going to be much more difficult because you're going to be coming from absolutely everywhere. But if you do decide to run away, make sure your squad all runs away at the same time. Do not be that one guy who just ditches the squad and leaves everybody to die. Also, a super underrated thing you're going to have, you know, some decently okay players on your team. Focus fire on the enemies. You see the pro players doing it, you know, when they get 10 damage, they're calling out 10 damage to this guy. They're calling out damage to other people. I think the only way to consistently get kills at long range, if you do not have a Kraber on your squad, it's going to be to call out other enemies, the damage to them, and to focus fire. If you're using an R301, you're not just going to beam someone for 200 damage at long range unless you're absolutely insane at this game. If you hear one of your squad mates say they did 80 damage to one player, it's probably going to be best if they are in viewing range to shoot at that person versus the other person that has 200 health. Take enemies one at a time out of the gunfight. It is going to be better to do 200 damage to one guy versus 100 damage to 3 enemies on the other squad. Good communication of who you're shooting at, how much damage you have done, that is going to be absolutely crucial. A huge step up from other squads in your current game. So my people, I think that's going to wrap up this pretty general video on how to win more gunfights in Apex Legends. I really hope you enjoyed this tip video. I might go into more depth on each individual category that I did. I might do more tip videos. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, it'd also be pretty cool if you go below this video and hit that subscribe button. And people, I think that'll be about it for me, the Alarmix, and I hope to see you in another video.